The most prevalent theories of motor control emanate from early work by a Russian scientist called Nikolai Bernstein. And his work started really in the 1920s. And Bernstein created what is now typically known as the Bernstein problem. And that revolves around understanding how we coordinate degrees of freedom. And what Bernstein did is he looked at machines and he understood how they work together to get there to achieve their tasks. And he realized that most machines, I know this is only a tool, but most machines only have 1 degree of freedom. So the degree of freedom here, of course, is for the shears to be able to open and close. What the shears can't do is they can't move in a 3-dimensional space. Otherwise, of course, they wouldn't coordinate together. The same thing would be true for this rather fancy potato masher. It just goes up and down to create the kind of squashing movement. What it can't do is it can't move around. It's trapped into one position. Well, when we look at human movement, that changes completely. So just looking at the arm structure, there's a degree of freedom at each joint of the finger. Then when we look at the wrist, so we've got all the joints of the finger. Then we look at the wrist. Well, the wrist can move this way, so there's a degree of freedom. And it can also hinge this way, and all the movements in between. And then of course we get to the elbow, which has a degree of freedom, maybe more, and the shoulder has numerous degrees of freedom. Well, when we put all those degrees of freedom together, we have unlimited choices of movement. So the interaction between all that freedom means we can move 3-dimensionally in space, and effectively there are too many degrees of freedom for any given task. So what the Bernstein problem is all about is understanding how we use the redundant degrees of freedom, i.e. what happens with all the extra movement and the extra options that aren't needed.